Hey, this is Mira Beck, the founder of Overnight Success Publishing, and welcome to another episode of Overnight Success TV. On today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing event marketing expert and CEO of Pure Potentials, Jacki McLenaghan. Okay, Jacki, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm super excited about this interview because it's so near and dear to my heart. Since you are this, kind of the authority on filling events and getting kind of the hearts and seats, as we like to call it. Let's just dive straight into the interview and just tell me briefly about your upbringing. Where did you come from?
All right. Well, I'm Canadian, and I was actually born in Canada, a little odd as a child. I was a theater nerd. I loved drama. And so my background really started with that whole performance aspect. So what I did was my very first job, I did what everybody does. They kind of get a bartending job. Quickly realized I can't work for anybody else. And I started up at my very first company when I was about 22 years old. It was a theater company. So I did onstage productions, and then I, did dinner theater, a whole bunch of wacky stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm a Canadian girl who loves drama and got a lot of really interesting business building components from the theater world.
That's awesome. So that's really cool. So tell me about when you actually got into this drama company. So that was your business, your first business.
Well, actually, what I did, the very first thing that I did is I went out and I got an audition for a dinner theater company, and they hired me. So my very first acting gig was a paid gig. They gave me $55 and some food. So I was professional, and it was a lot of fun. We do this in Calgary, where I'm from. And then I started to think that I'd like to do, I'd really like to delve into the creativity, the aspect of putting on my own productions. So I started up a theater company that was on stage, meaning I would call, get the royalties. I'd hire all the people to build the sets. I'd hire the directors. I'd get the actors. I was one of the actors as well because I loved producing and performing. And then I quickly realized that when you do this, they expect for people to turn up and to watch the performance. So I had to learn how to market, fill those seats, and in theater there's not a lot of money, so it had to be done in a very creative way. So I learned some really interesting guerrilla creativity marketing ways to put butts in seats, or hearts in seats, as you say. And otherwise people would be staring at me and wonder, where's the audience?
So why don't we just dive right into that? I like to pick your brain a little bit on the actual some strategies and some learning experiences, lessons that you've learned over the years when it comes to filling your live events, because it is by far the biggest issue that almost every one of my clients that's doing live events is dealing with and is looking for help with, is to actually getting people into the room. So all right.
Okay, well, my very first tenant or mandate is I just assume nothing will work. So it means you've got to try everything, and you have a lot of different tactics and strategies working together. And I learned this from the fact that I did this theater production once. I took out one ad in a really well-placed magazine, and I filled the event twice, every show, the entire time. And I thought, I've got this figured out. I put an ad here, and this is going to fill this room. So the next time I did it, it wasn't exactly the same kind of results. I didn't get anybody from it, and I banked on one particular type of strategy. So I explored with, print and online, and in the theater world, sometimes we would be out there in costumes, handing out flyers, like posters, any possible thing that you can imagine. I have been in the trenches and I have tried. And the things that I really noticed are, these are all great, but you have to mind your metrics when you're filling an event. And I think that's a big mistake that people don't do. They do something like, I'm going to put this on my website, I'm going to get affiliates, I'm going to do this, but they're not watching where their real greatest successes are coming from. And they need to really focus on that. And so obviously all of the tactics are out there for everybody to know how to do them. It's just a matter of, do you have really good, well-tested copy for people? Do you have a really good system to bring them into your world without going straight to, come to my event? Some people just get out there, I'm going to post it on Facebook, I'm going to stream, come to my event. And there's a lot of different ways to nurture people. And when we have events, we want to have people in the audience that we already have relationships with. So you want, if I have a 200 person event, I want 200 people that have been engaged with my material, who know me. So it's not for the faint of heart, first of all. And you really do need to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get out there and make human connections. My favorite tool for filling events, by far, hands down, LinkedIn. In my industry, it's LinkedIn all the way. Money in the bank for me.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I don't know that many people that you hear LinkedIn as
I'll give you a secret tactic right here. LinkedIn used to have, for filling events, it's very much about, first, this part of the strategy, we're going to get people from out of town this many months out, this many months out, we can get a little closer. And then by the time you get closer to the event, you're really looking for people who are in that area already. So LinkedIn used to have a feature where you could do advanced targeting and add in the zip code and your keywords, and you could find people in whichever demographic you were in, whichever strategy you were. They changed that feature, but they have Sales Navigator, so you can pay for it. Worth every penny to know who's in that area, who would be interested in events, and then approach them, talk to them, be in their groups, but with content that is meaningful for them. So that for me is like one of the biggest, hugest ways to fill events.
That's pretty awesome. Well, that's an exciting strategy, and I wish we had hours and we could have actually done a deep dive into how to do it all, but we don't. But I'm just glad to hear that, because I'm sure there's going to be other opportunities for people to learn a little bit more as we dive into it, and possibly after the interview, if they want to connect with you, we'll just make sure that we'll add some resources where they can really learn some more if they really want to do it. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is what's working today? So LinkedIn, really, that would be your answer. LinkedIn being the big things.
I mean, the biggest way to get people to get speaking gigs or to get people into the room is by getting people into the room and having speaking gigs, which is ironic, right? And like you said, it's a real challenge for people. I own an international speaking organization, which is the sole focus of making sure we build stages for people to get out there. Because not enough stages means we're not able to speak enough, and we don't speak enough, we don't actually get super clear on our message. So there's a lot of people that go, write your signature speech, which I believe in. But if you write your signature speech, there is a vast gap between when you say the words, how the audience reacts, and what you've written. So it's about getting out there more and more, and you start to see your own patterns. You see when people lean in, you start to see what's important to them. Now you can go back to the tactics and strategies to fill the event, because you know what your audience wants more than what you think your audience wants. So it's a catch-22. And I knew that this is a problem for people. So it's kind of my mission to help build these stages. I've been building stages since theater days, right? Put people out there, give them an opportunity to step into the spotlight. If they're sharing with other people and they're building their own communities, it's going to have a great fan out effect.
Yeah, totally. And I've noticed with me, you're saying it's catch-22 too. Having a speech, I spoke, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times now, that it was either I was doing a seminar AV in the back of the room and I have my crew running it, so I was able to step forward and actually do a presentation on video marketing. But it was always, hey, a speaker didn't show up, would you mind speaking with like 1 hour notice? Or, at least, next day maybe, hey, I got somebody didn't show up, while you're there, would you mind, sharing? So I think having your signature talk ready to go at moment's notice so you can be the hero and save the day would be definitely, if somebody doesn't know where to start, I would say that could be potentially one starting point, is actually getting your message clear on your message and getting your presentation done. And
I tell that to people all the time. I go, okay, you get up, go up there and speak in one of these organizations, and they're like, but I'm not ready, I didn't prepare. And I said, this could happen. And they're like, when would this ever happen? You just proved my point.
Right?
No, it's awesome. My very first one, when I used to not be able to speak in front of more than 2 people at a time. Speaking was my biggest fear. And one of my awesome friends and clients in the very beginning basically called me from behind the AV station, not having my crew yet at that time. It was more like have the camera guy just to follow the action. You step from behind the live switching mode and come and talk to our 120 people in the audience about using video in marketing of our business. And it was like an out-of-body experience. I still remember, the whole thing just kind of like lifted. I saw myself from above walk into the stage. I spoke maybe for half an hour, and then I had 20 people lined up asking questions. So I knew that there was a connection because people were interested enough to actually ask a bunch of questions. And I was so grateful to him for doing that for me. And he shared with me that before that, someone else did it for him / to him because it didn't feel all that great, when it was happening. But you are totally right with just do it. Like, of course, I wasn't trained. I didn't have any presentation. It was just me sharing my message. And I realized very quickly, and they're saying that public speaking, I guess, is above being dead, in that people would rather deliver the eulogy, be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. So I think that having just the guts to do it and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it to refine your message is really important because, I can't stress it enough. So if you're watching it, you like me, can't talk to more than 1 or 2 people at a time, get over it, share your message. And I think that to me was the thing. When I'm talking about video marketing, I can talk for hours and I don't mind. If somebody puts me on the spot and asks me to talk about something, I have no idea what I'm talking about, then that's where the fear comes in. So I don't really think it's fear of public speaking, it's just fear of being caught, not knowing the answers or not be able to respond in front of a crowd. But I'm sure that people that follow you are all people that have a message inside they just want to share. And so I don't think we would have that problem.
What really is important, and I love these things because of the improv background, there's a long story of how I switched out actors for speakers and how I got into this industry, but improv was really important because there was something called improv heaven. You're required to try to make a joke every 90 seconds or to get a reaction. And if you didn't get it, you got to keep going and keep trying, right? And there's all these great, you stop really feeling like, what are they thinking of me? You're really trying to work a process. If it doesn't work, off to improv heaven. We don't care. We got to keep going, right? Yeah. And people don't really fear public speaking. They actually fear public humiliation.
Yeah. So that's right. Yeah.
You don't know the answer. What are they're going to think of me? All of the mental things that are going on in your head. And if people can switch that around, the trick is, yes, we can get up there and we can be nervous and we can be afraid, and we're human, and I get that. But if you can think about, I just really want to engage with this audience and serve them. Mm-hmm. So, you think a lot about these organizations and they're great for the structure, like Toastmasters or NSA, great for public speaking structure. But I like what you said, and this is my philosophy too. It's speaking to your audience like people from the heart, instead of worrying about what's going on in your own self, worry about how you're serving them. And it makes a huge difference in your nerves as well.
That's awesome. I don't know if it was Zig Ziglar or whoever had this quote, but there is a saying, when you're nervous, get in service. And I think it was Zig, and I keep telling myself that all the time too before I speak, because it's not about me. It's just about let's spread a message, let's share with the world, and if there's one person in the audience that's gonna benefit from it, then it was all worth it. So that's pretty awesome. Cool. So, I think that this was worth the whole interview alone, because I know that there are plenty of people like me that have the same fear, and the way you've positioned it, I just love that point. So definitely want to drive this home, make sure that you got it.
Yeah, well, let me give one more example, because this just happened. A really good friend of mine, and she works in a high-level position in an organization. She doesn't love speaking, right? So she came to my 2 back-to-back events, and the first night was a very intimate crowd. She spoke, she nailed it, there was a lot of connections. She was very happy. So then she came back to another event the next night, and it was a much bigger group. And they're a very different kind of crowd. They're very quiet, conservative. They don't want to laugh too much. And I said, are you going to go up? And she said, no, I can't speak her. And her face got red. And I know that they're a tough crowd, right? And after a while, when you speak, you kind of think, ooh, a tough crowd, I'm going to crack you. This is my fun, right?
Yeah.
I pulled her aside and I said, if you don't win them over and you get completely rejected, this is a good thing. Because this is something about you. You're the head of this really important position in your company. You are a figurehead. If you don't win them over, it's still good. If you win them over, it's also good. It feels really great, right? Either way, this is for you. This is so that you can get your message and serve and support. I said, just look at me. I got you. I'll support you and love you. And she got up there. Obviously, she won them over. She was so great. But it's really, it's back to what you said. If you're not getting out there and doing it, you're actually doing a disservice to yourself and the people that you could be supporting. So
that's a great point. What was the smallest audience you ever talked to?
Maybe like 4 people.
Okay, good.
Well, meeting, I guess. It happens, and Wayne Dyer would say the best things ever. He said, I don't care how big or small my audience is. If I have a message, I will share it to 3 rats in a sewer. Because he just wanted to spread what he wanted to share. And what I found was those 4 people, by the way, they've come to all of my events, not all of them, but they've been loyal people forever, because if you go in with it's big, it's small, it doesn't matter. The right people are here. Who cares? Big mistakes people make are, if you get a small crowd, because events can never be, can never predict them, clump them together, restructure on the spot. This is intimate. Ooh, aren't we lucky? We're going to get to have more time together. Really make it special. Those have been some of the most powerful experiences, right?
Totally. And it's a great point. I did an event where we had, I don't know, let's say 40 people, made X amount of dollars. Next year, despite all the effort, we only got 7. And it was definitely growing experience for me, because I had to tell myself the day before the event that I need to focus on the 7 that came versus the hundreds that didn't. And the kicker here is that we made the exact same amount of money, almost to $1, with those 7 people in the room that we did previously with those 40. So after that, I experienced that. There's nothing that can happen from now on that would get me to cry over not having enough people in the room. Just like you said, restructure it. If it's small event, oh, you're lucky you have intimate access to me and this and that. If it's big event, awesome. It speaks for itself. So I love it. So I know that we are fairly time limited today. So let me dive into some of the success questions that are not as related maybe to speaking business, but to you. I in these interviews, I always interview people about their journey, about their success, some of the keys to their success, because success means something different to each person. And I want the viewers to really see all the different perspectives and different situations, so they can connect with you if that's the right fit. So let's just kind of dive in, and let's tell me about your why. Why do you do what you do? Why do you get out of bed every morning and go promote your events and put together events, do all this stuff that sounds like a lot of work, to be honest?
Because I'm crazy. No, to start off, it's true that I have a natural inclination to love this. My mother used to kind of make fun of me because she would take me to the playground and I'd have all the kids doing all the things and I'd have everything organized and I'd be making an event, So I did love it. But I was actually really fortunate enough to grow up with my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. We all lived in the same house. And I was very close, especially with my grandma. And she was just so talented in so many ways, but she never would step out of her comfort zone, ever. So it was kind of funny as a kid. It was my personal mission to torture her. I'd phone her up like, hey, I'm going skydiving. And she's like, no, you'll be killed, So she didn't want to ever get out there and do anything. And long story short, I loved her. She was very supportive. But at the end of her life, I was with her when she passed. And she did not go without regret. And so if people do not step into their greatness, they are actually, it's a cliche, but I saw it happen. You will die with the music in you. You'll go to your deathbed with regrets. I saw somebody I love have that happen to them. So it's meaningful for me for people to get out there and to share their message. I love it. I know as humans, we have this need to be heard. I have it, you have it. Some people want it more than others, but nonetheless, we need to share our messages, right? So if there's a big hole, not enough stages, you know what? I know how to fill events. I know how to build stages. I know how to build community. This is a gift for a reason. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and in your case, it's got to be really awesome feeling and fulfilling, because you help people to help other people. And that's like in this coaching industry, you're not just affecting the ones that are working with you, but you're affecting also the ones that they are going to be working with. And so, it can really translate to tens of hundreds of thousands, millions of people in a lifetime. So I'm sure that, you're not going to leave with your music inside of you. It sounds like you're living it now. So that's pretty awesome. So tell me about your typical day. What's your kind of the day in life of a successful entrepreneur like?
Do I really have to say this? It might not look so successful anymore. Right now, because I recently just launched these international speaking organizations, almost by accident, we're kind of in a place of rapid growth. So my typical day right now is a little stranger than a normal typical day, or a typical day I would like in my mind. But right now we're just in a really heavy duty setting up phase with these groups. Like I said, I launched 9 different clubs throughout Canada and the US. And so I have been literally going and traveling to all of these cities myself, opening up the clubs and finding leaders. That's kind of been my big focus right now, is to make sure that I can create a sustainable community for them, put a leader in place, train them appropriately so that that can be their community. And then we can move on and have, bigger things. Like I do a big speakers retreat once a year. Yeah. So I'm really excited right now. So my typical day is, it's not too hard for me to get out of bed. Yeah. I'm excited about going there, helping people, getting these things set up. Mostly though, I work a lot. I'm not going to lie. I work a ton. I love things like going to yoga after work, or going for a noon run, just as a reset, get things kind of shaped up for me. Mm-hmm. I think that to have enough energy to be successful, you kind of have to take yourself away from that now and again. I love exercise and music, reshift, get back into it. Yeah. But I love what I do. I love it. So
I can tell. You can't hide it. And I was going to ask you about what do you do for yourself as a me time leading up to the answer you just gave us. So we don't even have to dive into it, but I just want to, obviously make the point that it is important to take care of yourself, because without the body, if you're broken, you can't help anybody. And the airlines are like, that's the closest message I can come up with. You're supposed to put the mask on the other person before you put it on yourself. Or the other way, you're always supposed to put a mask on yourself before you put it on the other person. And that really, I've experienced it a couple of times in my life, and it's super important. So, it's a machine.
I think too, it's about gratitude. Was getting ready for one of my big 3-day events in California. So I was like, okay, I got to get my mind into the right frame. And in your mind, you're thinking about your event and everything you have to do. And it's like, you got to go. I went to the ocean and I thought, I'm going to collect some rocks. I'm going to throw away all my worries into the ocean, right? So I'm kind of doing this, a little bit of woo-woo thing, but it was fun. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, I am so lucky. Yeah. Here I am worrying about what could happen, but I'm in California on a beach. People are coming from all over the place to spend their time and energy to come to this event. Yeah. I kept one of the rocks and I went, this is my gratitude rock. And I'm just going to remember all the time that I'm very lucky to be doing what I'm doing. And you can always take a minute, even in a busy day, and go, I just feel grateful,
That's really awesome. That's really cool. So tell me about some of the books that you would recommend to anyone that's watching. They should have in their library no matter what, and maybe possibly even books that you've read more than once. What are kind of the gems?
One of them that really comes to the top of my mind is Invisible Influence. And what's his name? Dr. Jordan something. It's Invisible Influence. And it's awesome because we don't know that we want to influence others, especially people with a message to share, people who are in this space. They're like, how can I be more influential? But what's really cool about it is it looks at how we actually are being influenced, and we don't really know, because we think, no, that wouldn't be me. I wouldn't think to do that. But even within the book, they do activities that show you that simple things like wording or can really change how we react. So I like that because I really like checking back in with myself and seeing what's going on. If you're into business, if you're an authority, an expert, a coach, I like the book Unmarketing, and it's by Scott Stratton, who's a Canadian author. I like that book a lot because it's like, people think sales and marketing is maybe not their favorite part of it, but it's all part of it, right? And it's about creativity. And he puts these funny things in the footnotes. So he has a footnote, and if you don't bother to read them, you miss out on all these jokes. So I just get a kick out of it. I guess those are two that come to the top.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, I haven't read either one of those, so I'm gonna make sure to look them up. The unmarketing, I love that idea, because when you realize that you're not in speaking business or video production business, whatever, you really are in marketing and selling of that business, or the service that you provide. It's a big mind shift. People think that they're gonna be the mechanics for the rest of their lives, and when they start their own business, it's a kind of rude awakening for a lot of people, and they realize it's not just about doing the stuff what you love per se, but you actually have to market, and you have to do so, putting a different spin on it. And I'm assuming the book is probably all about that. Would be awesome. So yeah, I can't wait to read that. Speaking of influences, you mentioned influences. What people have influenced your life?
Well, obviously my mother, my grandmothers. I felt that, people want to have these big names, but for me, one of the greatest things that ever happened was being in a household where I had that many generations of moms and women, and my great grandmother lived to be 101 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I know there was at one point, we have a 5-generation picture, my daughter, my mom, all that. But she was such a cool lady. She finally moved out of where we all lived, and she moved into an old folks home, not a nursing home, but an old folks home. And she would still babysit me sometimes. So when you're a kid and you go into an old folks home, you are a rock star. You were like, they will give you peppermint candies, and everybody thinks you're the best thing going. So it was a really good time to feel, because I was a nerdy kid, right? To have so many moms around to support you still allowed me to be creative and express myself. And I will be forever grateful for that, for sure.
That's pretty cool. The 101 years, that would be everybody's dream come true. So share with me some keys to your success, whether it's relationships, business, happiness, health. What do you do that kind of would be something you would like to share with people that haven't made it maybe to that point yet?
I would call it the best salsa ever. And it's kind of a joke. It's sort of a short joke for my mother makes salsa. And every time she makes a batch of salsa, I eat it and I think, this is the best salsa I've ever had. So she's like, how can you say that every time I make salsa, that this is the very best one? Yeah. And I think it's just because success means being able to enjoy your life. And being able to enjoy your life means being present and right there in the moment with that best salsa that you've ever had.
That's really cool. So staying present and in the moment, that sounds like an ongoing theme in a lot of the interviews, and it's really important today when we are running 1,000,000 miles an hour and all the influences from social media and the internet and handheld devices. Like, we are so plugged in so many levels. It's really hard to stay present like it used to be. When the phone was attached to the wall and you couldn't walk away with it, it was much easier to stay present. Or when you had 2 TV channels on your TV. So.
You had to get right back in the room. That's a really good point. You had to physically be touching things like your TV or your phone. It is true. I mean, I don't always stay present. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at that, because we have a lot of distractions. But if I ever think, what is the best thing I can do right now that I'm not feeling well? It's like, get back right here, That's
cool. So how about time management? So we're talking about being present. Do you have any way that you manage your time, or do you just kind of go throughout the day? There's a lot of people putting out fires, but if you have any time management tip for people to manage their time a little better.
Well, as business owners, we tend to, and I think it's really good to wear a lot of hats, to put your hands on a lot of things, because that experience will allow you to know what needs to get done. Because a lot of people will go, I'm so busy, maybe I should hire a virtual assistant or something, but they don't really know what they're hiring or those positions. So I think it's important to kind of understand the roles, because you can't, and this doesn't make sense for, I'm saying don't delegate at first, which isn't a time management tip normally. It's understand what the roles are and then go and find people to help you out in those roles so you can completely understand what needs to be done. Not always been my greatest strength. It's only recently that I've started hiring correctly, really. And time management, I'm not going to say is my best strength, but I've been finding people and willing to give up some of the things that I just shouldn't be doing or we shouldn't be doing. And I mean, it's not rocket science, delegate appropriately, but I think the missing component in that is to really understand what you're delegating first. And that's going to make the world of difference.
I personally think that this is a really, really important point again to drive home for those of you watching this interview. If you are the solopreneur that hasn't really hired anyone yet, and it's kind of the chicken and egg, like do I have enough work for the other person or can I afford the other person? And it just goes in circles. And with opening the studio, expanding my businesses now, I was forced into finally doing it after a decade of fighting it. And I cannot agree with you more when it comes to clarity of the message or the task that you're trying to hire for, because that was the biggest thing for me. Because if you don't do it, you're just really wasting resources and time and effort on your end, because if the other person doesn't get communicated to clearly about the task, they're not going to do it effectively and efficiently either. So. And that will be kind of the nightmare stories about how employees are bad and this and that. That usually comes from the unclarity on your part, and usually it would be your fault at the end of the day, not theirs. But so the last question I have for you for today is your definition of success. Since that means different things to each person, I just want to show yet another perspective of definition of success. So what does it mean to be successful to you?
That's a great question, because I think just even very recently, there's been a significant shift in myself personally and professionally. I've always been doing, events, and in your mind you think, I'm successful if I can make this money and if I can get this many gigs, and it's if I can do this, if I can do that, right? And all of a sudden, just from the speaker clubs that I've been running and watching people share their stories and just having it not even be something that's being monetized, just watching people share their stories. For the first time ever, I really feel like I have something that I can create that will exist without me. So I think success would be to have a legacy, but do something that actually puts it into the hands of other people. And a really wonderful kind of example of that, I live in Calgary, which is an oil and gas town, right? So all these oil and gas companies. And there's this big company, and I went to their 50-year reunion, and they had rented out this whole huge hotel and all of this big fancy stuff, and it's very corporate. But they had the past founders of that company come up on stage. So they're like in their 90s. And they were small business entrepreneurs, people who started in their garage. And they're like, look at you guys. Nobody really pays attention or knows them. They built it and now they're not a part of it. But they had that privilege to look at and see something that they created that meant a lot and served and supported a lot of families. And they created something from nothing. So for me, I love creating something that can withstand the test of time, can support people, and doesn't have to be so much about you or me,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that idea of creating something that will last past your lifetime. That's really how you're gonna continue to be remembered one day. And I just recently seeing Zig Ziglar passing a few years ago, and then his son Tom taking over, and the whole organization is continuing on with Zig's message. Sounds like something that could potentially be very similar to your clubs and your other stuff, that it can just run on its own. So that's pretty awesome. Well, I know you have to run, so if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing some resources and ways people can connect with you, if they want to take it to the next level, if you are speaker, author, coach, someone who can benefit from speaker training, someone who can benefit from putting more butts in seats at your seminars, if somebody really wants to go and take a deep dive what can they do from this point on?
Sure. Well, I have my upcoming speakers retreat that's happening in Arizona in October 27th to 29th. I love the speakers retreat. I'm very proud of it. It is a place where you can come, you can get that information. We talk a lot about how do you fill events, how do you get more speaking engagements, but there's also booking agents there. We also put our attendees on the stage, and my professional team films them in that setting, because I know you have a film studio, but there's something about the money shot, being on stage live with the people there. You need that for your sizzle reel. We have photographers come out, and then we have amazing keynotes who share the secrets to seven-figure speaking businesses. So this year we have Jay Facette, Suzanne Evans, Sean Shuchuk, Jimbo Marshall. So it's an amazingly great event. And people just get a lot of connections there, a lot of fun. It's in Arizona, October 27th to 29th. If they want to come as my guests or your guests for watching this show, they can. I will just give them a link that you can post with the a seat deposit, a $197 seat deposit. You get all of that stuff included, like all the videos, the headshots, everything. The only reason we do a seat deposit is because I have to make sure I have enough staff and resources on site. We hand that back to you at the end. And it's just a really fun experience.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for offering that. And you know, this interview is going to stay sort of evergreen. So even if the October event doesn't work, I'm sure we can update the link above the interview. And
if it's passed, we have these events twice a year. And we also, if you just go to purepotentials.com, there's a ton of free stuff over there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you for taking the time. I hope that you enjoyed this show and got some awesome notes. I always do these interviews, but I feel like I get more out of it than sometimes the viewers. So I just enjoy doing it for my own enjoyment, and that's how I learn and that's how I grow. So hopefully you got a lot out of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us, and I really appreciate it. Good luck with your career and all the successful stuff that you are doing, and hopefully we get to meet in person soon at one of the events that either I'm doing or that you're doing. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. You're a lot of fun. I enjoyed being here.
Thanks, me too. Bye-bye.